The Supreme Court heard arguments over the legality of state laws that ban males from participating in female sports. The plaintiffs, males who identify as females, say the laws violate the Constitution. Joining us to discuss is Jonathan Hullihan, President and General Counsel of Remnant Law. Jonathan, good afternoon. Always good to have you on the show. To start off, can you tell us what is the Supreme Court exactly deciding in these cases and what it's not deciding?
Thanks, Don, for having me on. So these two cases are consolidated cases from, as you articulated, state bans on transgender athletes participating in women's sports. So one is from the state of Ohio from 2020, a ban that applied to high school and college sports teams, and then a West Virginia law 2021 that applied to females in high school. So what the Supreme Court is deciding is if these bans violate the Due Process Clause of the Constitution under the 14th Amendment, and also whether or not it violates Title IX, which it was put in place by Congress in 1972 to protect women's sports and also encourage women to participate and provide equal opportunity for women in sports leagues. So it's not deciding. It's not, while it has an impact, it's not going into the pronouns and all the other things that have been discussed in policy. It's really talking about women's sports. And is sex discrimination, does that apply to gender identity? That's the bottom line that your viewers need to understand. And there's wide-ranging effects on this. I mean, there's 27 states in the United States that have similar bans. So these are the first kind of cases that have reached the court, and that's what they're going to decide if sex discrimination applies to gender identity.
Okay, so thank you for explaining that. What are some of the core arguments? Can we hear that were made by Idaho and West Virginia?
Well, they really make the state bringing this challenge is that it's fundamentally unfair to have biological males competing with females. It takes away opportunities, scholarships, awards, all of those things that were encouraged with Title IX to get women to have more participation in sports and all the great things that come with sports, right? Like leadership opportunities, college opportunities, all these things that women gain from participating in sports. And they're arguing the fundamental fairness of allowing biological males to compete in these sports teams takes away those opportunities and undercuts the entire intent and congressional intent and what Congress meant on with the definition of biological sex when they passed Title IX.
Okay, you said earlier that this will impact 27 states. So what exactly would the impact be, and how consequential will this ruling be for women's sports?
Well, I mean, it could impact, depending on the ruling, it could impact. There's a couple differences. In the Idaho case, there's some testing that has to take place in the law, gender testing, and it's what the ACLU and Lambda Legal had cited as invasive. The West Virginia case doesn't have quite the invasiveness as alleged by the ACLU, but it could impact just the whole scheme of Title IX, the federal scheme of what is biological sex, what is sex discrimination. So if the Supreme Court says yes, a ban on transgender athletes participating on women's sports team is discriminatory, it violates the Due Process Clause, you're going to see a lot of those bans get dialed back, get challenged. You're going to see, in my opinion, you're probably going to see a lot of the practical effect is you'll just see a lot of women's sports teams. There's not going to be as many opportunities as there was before because it's too challenging to continually fight these Title IX complaints through the federal government. If there's another in the next administration, if the Department of Education seeks to enforce those bans. So you're going to see long-lasting effects on women's sports teams and those opportunities, which would be a real shame to young athletes and young women that seek sports for those opportunities for scholarships, leadership opportunities, and just teamwork and building character and all the things that comes with being on part of a sports team.
Okay, so if the Supreme Court says yes or no, how immediate would the impact on the states? What is the time difference between the ruling and actual effects on the ground?
Well, you'll see it'll be June of 26 before the decision is expected. So there's obviously going to be some lag time. And then what does that actually mean to the states? So there's going to be some lag time between what the ruling says and how it's applied, because each state may have written their law differently. For example, in West Virginia, they mirrored the language from Title IX. What they defined sex as, biological sex. So you're going to see some lag time depending on the states, but it could have a huge impact just on the overarching idea of how you define biological sex. So if the Supreme Court says gender identity falls in that category of sex discrimination, and you have transgender athletes that are participating and maybe they're banned currently from these sports, I mean, they're going to have to roll all those laws back, or at least they're going to be challenged. So it could have long-lasting impact on women's sports based on the ruling. My impression is, though, I mean, this was a long hearing, right? This was 3.5 hours with the two combined cases. There was a lot of discussion on Title IX. But the conservative justices, they really seem to lean more towards deferring to the states, much like the Scarametti case on gender on Scarametti, which dealt with gender reassignment and all those medical things that occur with that, whether or not that's lawful. You're going to see in this case a little bit of a lag time, but either way, the conservative judges really seem to defer to the states. And my feeling is it'll be a 6-3 opinion, and they're going to uphold the bans just based on the body language, based on the questions. Justice Gorsuch, he really focused in kind of what I was talking about, those leadership opportunities, those scholarship opportunities lost, and the fundamental fairness that would be lost if these bans on transgender athletes was overturned.
Okay, just one last thing, Jonathan. Do you think the decision will be very black and white, for example, like either upholding the bans or striking them down? Or do you think we'll see something more nuanced in the language, a more specific ruling?
Well, it's in the ACLU and the Lambda Legal, they asked for that, actually. If the justices didn't uphold the ban, they asked for it at least to be sent down to develop facts further. One of the cases was an injunction. So you could see that if the bans are not upheld, you could see maybe send it back down for further development, maybe, as applied to, not due process, but as applied to Title IX claims. You could see a really nuanced claim, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be they're going to uphold the bans, in my opinion. Either way, putting that definition of sex discrimination into Title IX or any kind of biological sex, I don't think it's going to work. I mean, Congress was clear when they passed Title IX in 1972 and the subsequent amendments. They were all talking about biological sex. So to recategorize gender identity into biological sex, it would be a very frustrating thing to unpack. Just from a policy perspective, you're going to have courts be arbitrators of, hey, has this person taken enough hormones? Has this person, what does their testosterone look like? All of those kind of scientific testing things. It's unworkable in the court system. So you really have to have a clear definition and a demarcation of what that means. And biological sex, I mean, you were born a male or born a female. It's a pretty good indicator of that.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a good point to me. I'm not an expert, but really good to hear your insight today. Very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom, for having me on.